Hello, Megan Thompson here with Megan Thompson Coaching. Welcome to our show. Today we are going to talk all about how to eliminate the case of the Mondays for your sensitive child or teen in 3 simple steps. Now we're going to be doing some myth busting today, and I really love these when we do this, an episode like this, because a lot of times when we speak with parents of sensitive kids, or we listen to them post in our Facebook group, or we hear our clients in the mindset coaching component to what we work with, we have to bust a ton of myths. And so I'd love to be able to do this for everybody here listening. And today we're going to speak all about the case of the Mondays. This is a situation where parents of sensitive kids and teens have a really rough day, especially at the beginning of the week. This could be going to school or summer camp, or whatever's going on at the beginning of the week after the weekend, where the routine might have been more relaxed or busier depending on your lifestyle or just that weekend, right? So how to shift into that transition, especially in the mornings. Now, depending on where you live, we hear and work with all clients from all around the world. So this is relevant in this season for you if school's coming up, or if you work international, if you live internationally, then your kids might still be in school, or might be in school because it's winter time over there. So let's dive in. We're going to talk all about where the challenges are for parenting a sensitive child. And first things first, we want to describe what you might be dealing with so you know that this issue is for you, right? So if you're parenting a sensitive child and you're struggling with dealing with those daily meltdowns, day in and day out, your kid is struggling, especially in the mornings, that's what today's episode's all about, then you want to make sure that you pay attention, because there are many crucial components to breaking out of the morning meltdown cycle. And if your child is a teenager and just won't wake up on time, then this is also for you. This is true if your teen or preteen is struggling to get out of bed, is isolating, and not able to get moving in the morning. So this is super important to understand, okay? So why are parents coming to us with this issue, right? And how do you know that we know what we're talking about? So I've been helping parents of sensitive kids for over 10 years, and especially specializing in this modality, and running a group practice for many years recently in the mental health practice that I run in Maryland. And you're contacting us through our coaching company, and we work with clients internationally, eliminating the meltdown cycle in as little as 8 weeks for parents of children under high school age. And then we work directly with teens and their parents in the coaching company, and we help them break out of that same cycle in about 10 to 12 weeks of sleeping in, isolating, not able to participate in their daily lives, refusal, shutdown, not exercising, not hanging out with friends, not doing their work, schoolwork, etc. And all that's relevant for the clients that we work with, regardless of the age. And that's so, so important, because one of the things that we see and hear from parents of sensitive kids is that their child will grow out of it. And we work with clients of all ages, all the way up through the end of high school in this capacity. And it's simply not true that your child will grow out of these big behaviors. It might show up in a different way, but your child is needing some skills. So you want to make sure that you pay attention to this. So let's dive into our topic explicitly around how to break out of the issue that you're dealing with in the mornings, meltdowns in the mornings, right? Okay, so this could be daily, this could be every other day for you. It could be that your meltdowns are super long, but maybe they don't happen every day, or you're just dragging your kid out of bed and they're not able to turn it around, and they're super irritable and annoyed, not just tired, right? So there's a developmental issue in addition to the fact that there's an emotional issue, which is that negative mood, okay? So let's speak about this. First things first, okay? Wake time issues start at bedtime. That's myth number one, right? Wake time issues. Most people will think, and you might even hear this from sleep trainers. Now, notice the word sleep trainers. Most often, sleep consultants are working on training your child out of their behavior issue. Unfortunately, it doesn't address the emotional issue. So I'm using that word for an important reason. Many of the clients that we work with or the parents that we speak with have already tried to shift their kiddo out of struggling sleep issues, and they've consulted with a sleep consultant, and a fair amount of them have worked with people who have tried to just train it out of their kids, and that simply isn't going to work for your sensitive child. Now, sensitive children are 1 out of every 5. That means that your child is a minority. However, it is common in the sense that 1 out of every 5 has this personality trait. So it's important to understand that balance. This isn't a rare circumstance, right? A rare disease. This is a personality, a temperament, okay? So we know what works for sensitive kids, and we've been doing what works for over a decade, so we've seen it all. Noticing this for sure, it's very important that you notice that most of mainstream sleep advice is going to focus on the bedtime routine in order to improve wake time. And this is a myth for sensitive children. Sensitive children struggle with wake time way before they start getting ready for bed. Now, this is really important because if your sensitive child is having daily meltdowns and those happen to be in the morning, addressing the bedtime routine is not going to solve the problem. It is just going to alleviate some of the issue, but you will notice the meltdowns happening some other time. And then you might be focused on how to get your kiddo home from school without a meltdown, right? So you're basically playing whack-a-mole in this circumstance. And I want to break down why that is, because if you've recently seen a shift in your kiddo's timing of meltdowns by addressing bedtime when they were having morning time wake time meltdowns, then this is very relevant. So highly sensitive kids struggle with skill generalization. That means that if you take your kid to a one-on-one meeting, or you're trying to teach your kids in a skill set in a certain avenue in a certain time of day, it is very unlikely that skill set is going to translate into the rest of their lives unless you're capturing all of what we teach. And so that's really important. It's focusing just on teaching skills at bedtime to go to bedtime, to start bedtime in a more restful space is not going to totally fix this problem. It's a Band-Aid on something that needs surgery. And you know it because you are struggling to get out of bed on a daily basis as well, knowing that this is coming to you. And if this issue is impacting you at such an intense level, then you realize that it's much deeper than just whether or not your kid wants to go to school. So or wants to wake up at the time they need to wake up to do whatever it is that you're helping them accomplish that day. So let's break it down even further. One of the things that I think is so important to understand is when you're just focusing on bedtime to improve the morning meltdown cycle, many challenges arise, right? You might be struggling with trying to get your kid to go to bed earlier, and that can lead to another meltdown in and of itself, right? And so you're stuck in this walking on eggshells experience, and this is something that your pediatrician might have shared with you. They might have asked you how long is your child sleeping, and while that's important, right? There are pretty clear markers for children and how much sleep children should get in order to support their healthy development. It is not the whole picture, so it's really important to understand that's just one piece of the puzzle. So when we see parents get stuck, it is in thinking that this is going to be a magic pill. If my kid is more well rested, they will not have meltdowns. Now, when your child is experiencing meltdowns on a daily basis, a lack of sleep is only one part of it, right? We always want to look at biological components whenever we coach our clients, whenever I train my clinicians, I train my coaches. We all look at the biological component, but that means we're also looking at the biology of your child's personality trait. And that means that sleep is just a piece of it, right? So when we play into that myth, meltdowns have to be addressed in a specific order, and they need to be addressed in a specific time of day too. Because you know that if you're trying to learn a skill at bedtime and you're studying at bedtime, you're probably going to fall asleep with the book in your lap, right? So think about that. If you're trying to help your child learn a new skill and then generalize it throughout the day, they're studying. They're studying with that skill. And it is least effective to start to study at bedtime. For most people, I should say. Now, obviously, we have the irregular night owl that some people might be, but that's not what we're talking about here. Children are not typically night owls. If they are, then there's a circadian rhythm issue going on in their biology, in their sleep habits, and their sleep patterns. So that needs to be corrected. So next thing is the myth number 2, right? Myth number 2 is that clothing meltdowns for sensitive kids, which we often see mostly in the mornings, that those clothing meltdowns for highly sensitive children are just about the senses, right? So we see so many parents who work with us in this capacity who come in saying, my child cannot handle socks. My child cannot handle underwear. My child cannot handle insert shirt label, right? It doesn't matter. What matters for sensitive kids is that you understand that this is not about the sensation of that experience on their skin. That is the straw that breaks the camel's back. Now, when you are trying to fix this problem and you hear from your child who is screaming that they won't wear whatever item of clothing in the morning, or they need you to go run to the washing machine and magically snap your fingers and dry their favorite pants when you ran the load last night overnight, then you can jump right back into your child's tunnel vision too, right? And start to solve the problem from noticing that, hey, if my child is telling me what they need through their words right now, then that might mean that I need to go buy the same pants over and over again. Let me just go run to Target, get that brand with a little kitty cat part on it in the label, and notice that that's cozy and comfortable, and it doesn't have the itchy piece in the tag for most sensitive kids. Now, some sensitive kids will pick up on that plastic label on the back, or whatever it is, the material on the back. But notice this, right? That is just fix-it mode for you. That is a symptom of the meltdown problem. This is survival mode parenting, okay? So you're following your child's lead in that level of intensity, and your child, when they are experiencing a meltdown, are out of control. And when your child is out of control, they are not feeling safe. And so they need you to back up, zoom out, and look at the big picture. If you're following your child's lead in that moment and they are experiencing a big meltdown, they are feeling out of control and even more lost and confused when you're following them. They're not exhibiting leadership qualities in that moment, right? Your child is out of control in their mind and body and heart, and they need you to notice what the real deep issue is. That's not something that your child's going to be able to be skilled about having a conversation with you about in the middle of a meltdown. Think about a time when you were extremely rageful or super sad. Are you very articulate? Right? So notice that. If your child is losing their mind, tongue in cheek, losing their mind over a pair of pants that they just simply are not available to wear, or this pair of pants that they wore last week that was perfectly fine on their body, and this week it is the itchiest of the itchiest, right? It's like you just threw 100% wool product on them. Then it's not about the fabric. Sensitive kids have an experience of the straw breaking the camel's back with that fabric. And that is very important for you if you're dealing with meltdowns on a daily basis, especially in the morning. You need to be addressing this in a bigger picture way than just trying to get your kid to pick the wardrobe that'll fit for them, because that is not actually the cause of the issue, and it's not going to solve the problem either. So I want to take this component to a deeper level, right? Because parents that we work with, they tell us stories all the time about how they are rushing to get the laundry done within 24 hours so that their kid can wear their same favorite purple pants every day. They have kids who are wearing the same winter jacket 3 seasons in a row, even though it's too chilly and it's already halfway up their sleeves, right? You know, it gets to the point where the winter jacket, the Velcro or the soft part of it is starting to leave marks on their forearms because it no longer fits, right? But they cannot tolerate another solution or an alternative or a substitute. And so then you are in not only walking on eggshells trying to turn this around, but you're also stuck in the sense that your child doesn't feel like they can creatively solve their problems. And that builds resentment. That builds dread for you, especially dread, but dread leads to resentment. And so when you are dealing with this big issue and you're going to sleep full of worry about how long the meltdown's going to last the next morning, and then you don't wake up with great sleep, right? Because who starts their evening in worry and wakes up refreshed, right? And when that happens and you're struggling in that same cycle, you need to be able to break down that cycle as well. We all always talk about how dealing with these meltdowns starts first with you. And that takes a lot of work. If you've had 30, 35, 40 some odd years of patterns of dealing with stress in a certain way, that is very difficult to break out of yourself without support. So I encourage you to focus on that and to notice how you've already been trying to turn this around and where you might get stuck. So when we shift this for our clients, one of the things that they notice is that this challenge can, with the right support and the right strategy and the right accountability, that you can shift out of this pattern very quickly. And then it's about making sure that you stay there, right? Because it's the human condition to slide backwards and to stay focused on fear. And so if you're training your brain to do something differently, then you need support in order to manage that. And so that's true in all avenues of understanding human nature. So the same doesn't change when we think about parenting, right? So the biggest challenge that is very important for you to notice in this is that for your child, they might be screaming about what their clothing is adding to their overwhelm, but their overwhelm started way before the morning started. It started yesterday or 2 days ago or last week, or it started in their worry for the future about how the day's going to go next. And so that requires some support in deciding, because before your child is able to share with you that insight and go beyond the issue at hand that is adding to their overwhelm, being able to break down so that your child can be insightful, so your child can share their insights with you, that takes a lot of work and certain pieces that need to be taken into play. And so you've heard what works for our strategy. Our strategy is first addressing how you're adding to the problem, right? And obviously there's no judgment here in that statement. I say that bluntly because I'm a direct person, but we all know that as parents we can get in our own kids' ways, right? And secondly is understanding whether or not you're following the research around highly sensitive kids, but not just what's out there on specific books with that title, right? That is just one part of the puzzle. Elaine Aron designed the personality trait. She named it, but her research started in the 90s. And the research around sensitive kids and sensitive personality has been around for centuries. And so noticing that, right, if you've just scratched the surface, if you just found out about the trait, then there are some pretty key missing pieces, especially in eliminating a daily meltdown cycle. That takes much more focus and more expertise than just one author's work. And then when we take into account the need to shift parenting and to do that systematically, it's important to understand what else needs to come into play. We need to be able to take advantage of the highly sensitive trait in a good way by paying attention to the fact that highly sensitive kids are more prone to positive environments. And so when you shift out of that dynamic, you need to be able to do that systematically so that it sticks, right? Because if your personality is to right now, you're showing up frustrated and aggravated and stuck and worried and overwhelmed, that's going to be really difficult to flip the script into experiencing positivity and joy and love, and focusing on that love first, right? Because obviously you love your kid. But you need to be systematic about that, because it's not just about pretending that everything's sugar plums and rainbow poops, right? It's about, or unicorn poops, right? It's about understanding how and when to use play to communicate, and to do that systematically. Because otherwise, then you're just invalidating yourself. Then you're just stuffing your emotions, and that's going to explode or leak out some other way. It might show up in your marriage. It might show up at work. Because you're just trying to hold it all together, and that there's only so long that you can do that without specific skills. And then when we pay attention to the need, right, the need to break out of this pattern, the need is because sensitive kids are more prone to shame. So if your child is not already naming that life would be better off without them, or that they hate you or they hate themselves, this is where it's headed. So the urgency is now in terms of turning this around. So when we look at being able to shift out of this dynamic, that takes a lot more work than just buying new pants at Target, right? Or Walmart, or wherever you're getting your kids' pants. The outlets or the mall. It doesn't matter. Online, right? That's where I do the majority of my shopping right now, as most of us are in pandemic living. But understanding that at this point, what we're dealing with is beyond the clothing. It's beyond the breakfast cereal. It's beyond the fact that they can't have a cupcake before they get out the door, or today's not donut day, right? It's not about that, or the fact that your kid is frustrated with their sibling who ate the last muffin, right? It could, for you, feel like that you have no idea what's leading to your kids' morning meltdowns, and I hope that this episode is insightful for you in terms of understanding where it's coming from, but then also so that you could take action on it. Because when we look at where you're we want to take this into preteen and adolescent land, and working with highly sensitive preteens and teens, the biggest challenge that you can experience is that you remember being an adolescent, right? You might have been irritable and angry about something, but you know for sure that it wasn't that particular thing usually that you were frustrated about. It was maybe something going on at school or something going on with your friends. But then your relationship with your parents might have compounded the issue as to whether or not you were sharing with them what was really going on. And that's the biggest issue, right? Teenagers are going to deal with stress. They're going to experience negative events in their life, just like all children. But the question is how? How are they managing it? Are they managing it by shrinking their own world, by leaving their peer group? Or are they managing it by reaching out for help? And that's a huge issue that we see across the lifespan for sensitive kids and sensitive teens, because that shrinking piece is isolation, and that's a symptom of the shame cycle. And so when we break out of that shame, and it's really important to not parent from that place and use shame-based parenting like punishments and lectures, then you need to be able to systematically do that, because that's not just something that you can all of a sudden start engaging in one simple activity, and then that changes the entire paradigm of your parenting, right? This takes work, and it takes a system. So when we think about what it takes, the next myth that I want to build, though, is that it actually doesn't take a lot of time. I want to share with you a case study of, and so myth number 3 is that 90-minute meltdowns are going to take over a year to turn around, right? This is very common. This is very common in the mental health world to perceive. It's very common in the behavioral pediatrician world to perceive and to believe. And it's very common in the occupational therapy world to think about, to believe. And so I want to bust this myth. For sensitive children who fit the sensitive personality trait, 90-minute meltdowns do not need to take a year to turn around. We can turn this around in as little as 8 weeks. And I want to share a case study for this. I want to take into account our client Diana. Now, they are getting ready to graduate our 10-week program, and that means that they're not done yet, which is why I mentioned 8 weeks. And so for this particular family, when they first got started, they were dealing with 90-minute meltdowns, and those were happening, and they were dealing with this issue for over 3 years. They had been seeking support from occupational therapy for 3 years, but prior to that and during that time, they were engaging in whatever they could get their hands on in terms of how to turn this around, right? And dealing with 90-minute meltdowns for any length of time is draining, let alone multiple times a week, multiple times a day, or consistently on a daily basis, right? And so this family, mom was drained. She was wiped out, as we spoke about earlier. She was trying for any given time to solve the problem and to break out of it, so much so that she would not even allow herself to enjoy a shower, right? So think about when your kid is a newborn, and all the parenting experts, all the pediatricians, they all mention that if you need a shower, take a shower, right? Put the baby in one of those safe contraptions that like aren't recalled right now, and stick it right outside the shower and take the shower. Okay? You might feel wiped out, but you're going to feel a heck of a lot better, and your baby will be a-okay with a clean mama. Now, that's a mentality that that the experts will encourage you, even when you leave the hospital. If you're the one who, if you had your child and birth your child, and when they give you that, directive, the principle around that is that your child is going to be okay, right? And your child will tolerate it, and you'll be able to handle your kid if you give yourself a break, even if your kid's not napping, right? Even if your newborn's not napping for long stints of time, even if you have a limited amount of support. Now think about taking that all the way from age 5 to 8, where this mom could not take a quick enough shower in the morning to get off and get ready for work and do all the things she needed to do, because she has multiple children. So much so that she was just trying to whip out as fast as possible, because if that meltdown started, everything was going to be delayed. 90-minute meltdowns in the morning, guys. I don't know about you, but if I got to be out the door, we all know if we need to be out the door, that we don't have 90 minutes to whip ourselves back into shape and to settle in and then add getting ready on top of that 90 minutes, right? That is unusual for the average family. And so she knew she had to walk on eggshells on a daily basis, and even then still couldn't guarantee, right? This is happening weekly. Multiple times weekly, 4 to 6 times weekly before we started working together at this avenue. The meltdowns were happening on a daily basis, but in the mornings for 90 minutes, at least those 5 days in the week on average, right? And so think about dealing with this for 3 years. Now, if you have been dealing with this for 3 years, you don't need to think about it. You just need to observe that this is a situation that you're likely in. And you're likely buying into the myth that this is going to take a long time to turn around. And for our client Diana, her child no longer has these meltdowns. This is 8 weeks later. Okay? She no longer has these meltdowns, and now she has outbursts. What's an outburst for an 8-year-old? Mom, geez. Now, I'm not going to scream into the mic for you, but you get what I'm saying? Think about taking a 90-minute yelling, kicking, screaming on the floor, 8 years old, just wiped out, completely incapable of solving any problems, let alone communicating what her needs are effectively and articulately. And then turn that around to having a slight raised voice, or even just raising her voice at the top of her lungs, right? And being able to bring it right back down and then tell her mom what she wants. Now, the capacity to do that requires a system. You need to be able to follow a system in order to turn that around. But noticing that is super important, because when we speak to parents who are seeing that this is possible for them, a lot of families can feel skeptical. Is this too good to be true? Is this relevant for my family? What about my kid? So I want you to use Diana's story as an inspiration, because this particular family had been through the ringer, had worked with the professionals who had told her this was going to take a long time, this was inevitable. I diagnosed her child with a lifetime developmental disorder, and chalked it up to, this just is what it is. And she was dealt that fate based on who she listened to. Now, thankfully, she also did one very important thing. She booked a call with our team, and she allowed herself to share her fears on that conversation. Now, it's really important to understand whether or not we can help you in breaking out of this system. Right? Breaking out of the system of meltdowns. There's a system going on. We need to turn that around. And great news for sensitive kids is that they are much more capable of turning this around very swiftly when you have the right system. And that's the same thing for this particular family. And these outbursts have been relevant for this mom for several weeks. This is not just a one-day meltdown-free moment that we're celebrating here. She just celebrated in our private client group, actually, that she was enjoying her shower, and she was experiencing gratitude for that because she couldn't remember the last time she rushed out of the shower. Now, this is a mom who 8 weeks ago couldn't wash her hair in the shower. Right? And there's a big difference between not washing your hair because you have a choice, because you don't want to. I've been there, right? Any of us long-haired ladies who deal with that, but and then feeling like you can't wash your hair because you can't keep your kids safe from their own emotional intensity, or your one kid safe from his or her own emotional intensity, their emotional intensity. That is a completely different experience, right? That's an experience where you feel trapped. That's an experience where you feel lost and powerlessness. And in that moment, Diana had a choice. She had a choice to stay in an experience of feeling helpless and listening to other professionals who said that this just is what it is and it's going to take a really long time to turn around. Or she had a choice to decide to trust her gut, notice that she was speaking with people who knew what they were talking about, and then she leaped in, noticing she and her husband decided to do that. Noticing that they could work this out together, that they could start to parent on the same page, and here they are 8 weeks later, completely turned around in that freedom, in that ability. And even when one of them steps in the past direction of trying to save their kid from her emotions, or trying to solve the problem for them, because they're on the same page, because they both know what their kid's capable of and what they are capable of as parents, they hold each other accountable. And that is a completely different perspective and a completely different approach than trying to counteract your spouse or co-parents parenting, because neither of you know how to get out of it, but you know that what the other parent's doing is wrong. That's a very different experience than saying to your spouse, hey, remember what we know works? Hey, you're doing that thing that doesn't work right now. How can I help you? Right? And having that conversation is a totally different ballgame, obviously, for the marriage, and for the co-parenting relationship, and obviously for their child, who now sees her parents in a unified front, and she feels connected to both parents too. And that's phenomenal. So I want to celebrate that, and we want to celebrate the opportunity that you have. You have the opportunity to have a conversation with our team and see if we can help you. See if that future is available for you and your particular child. Allow yourself to have that conversation with professionals, and notice whether or not you might fear that this might not be possible for your family, and identify how you can be inspired by families who, just like you, have been able to break this pattern, even if they've tried for 3 years straight to do it themselves, or to do it with a different avenue of support, right? And being able to turn that around and do that consistently, and know that you have the ability to completely shift out of this dynamic, that is available to you. All you have to do is head over to meganthompsoncoaching.com/talk, or meganthompsoncoaching.com/teen talk, so that you can support your sensitive child or teen in feeling completely free from the morning Monday experience that many people in the world feel. And when we think about raising your children, sensitive children and sensitive teens, you know that you don't want your sensitive child or teen to wake up and feel droned and drained on a Monday morning, right? You want them to be excited for their day. You want them to be excited for possibility, excited for whatever it is that they are going to create in their career, in their lifestyle, and in their lives on a weekly basis. And to look at the beginning of the week with eyes wide open and hearts full, right? And if your child is struggling with that, and that's something that is definitely a circumstance that can be turned around. And so if we're the ones that to help you, we can certainly have that conversation on the phone. We'll tell you exactly how that works and what the steps we would need to take for your particular family, and break that down more explicitly for your family. And if that's not the case, if we feel like there's something that's in the way, right, or that's something that's more appropriate for your family to take, then we have a team of trained expert professionals who are able to point you in the right direction. Maybe that be a particular type of therapy that your family needs, and the approach that you're taking locally isn't working. Or it's a matter of understanding what you need to cover first for yourself before you turn this around for your family. And we would give you that plan on that conversation so you can get started right away, because nobody needs to live in this intensity for any minute longer. Right? You know, when you wake up that early in the morning and you experience that dread in the pit of your throat, that you wish you had fixed this problem yesterday. So that's available to you, and I encourage you to book that call. We look forward to talking to you soon. Bye.